My mother seldom sends me messages, but yesterday there was one from her. I sensed something was off the moment I saw it. Family gathering, 7 p.m. compulsory attendance. No pleasantries, no inquiries, just an order as if I were an employee in their corporation, not their daughter. I stood outside the house where I had spent my childhood, my hand hesitating over the intricately designed brass doorbell. I knew that behind these doors awaited only disapproval and disappointment. A polished Mercedes was parked in the driveway, quietly reminding me that in the Sinclair family, achievement was measured by reputation, an Ivy League education, and financial success. And me, I had chosen a different route, one they neither understood nor accepted. The door opened before I could even knock. "You are late," my mother said. Her lips pressed so firmly together, I thought if she parted them, another lecture would spill out. I glanced at my watch. It was 6:58, because in this family even punctuality counted as tardiness. Entering the living room, the tension hit immediately. Rachel, my oldest sister, sat straight on the sofa, her lawyer's briefcase neatly at her feet. David, the youngest, a thriving entrepreneur, remained glued to his phone as if I was invisible. Luke, my older brother, still wearing his doctor's scrubs, stood with arms crossed, his gaze silently disapproving. My father was by the fireplace, hands clasped behind his back, his face as stern as a commander ready to announce a judgment. "Take a seat," he said. I glanced down at Sarah and then at the lone chair placed opposite all of them. They were gathered together. I was alone, an outsider. Slowly I sat down, keeping my back straight and my eyes steady. "What is this about?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Rachel opened her briefcase and retrieved a thick bundle of papers. "We have talked about the future of the family's public reputation," she said, her voice cold, as if presenting a legal argument. "We have reached a necessary conclusion, a decision made to protect the family's professional legacy that dates back to your grandparents," my mother added, sitting close to Luke, as if silently asking for his support. I picked up the papers and glanced over the dense text. I didn't need to read every word to catch the main points. Termination of family ties, loss of inheritance rights, severance of all financial connections. A bitter laugh slipped out of me, breaking the heavy silence. "You are disowning me," I said, looking at each of them, daring anyone to deny it. "This is not personal," David finally said, his tone indifferent. "It's just business. It wouldn't look good if my colleagues found out I had a sister working in that kind of profession." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm your sister. How is this not personal?" My father sighed, shaking his head. "Your way of life damages our family's image. That so-called job of yours is a business," I interrupted. "And it's a joke, Luke." Everyone at the hospital interrupted, aware that I have a sister who creates inexpensive crafts that contribute nothing to my reputation. My fingers gripped the pile of documents as I had become accustomed to their judgment and their looks of disappointment. However, I had never imagined they would actually exclude me. My mother spoke, her voice gentler, but still tinged with the same hidden disdain. "We provided every chance for you," she said. "The finest schools, connections, and support, but you wasted everything playing with glue and paint." I drew in a deep breath, swallowing the fury swelling within my chest. "Where do I sign?" My mother blinked as if she expected to see anger or desperation, but instead met indifference. "Sarah, if you change your mind," I asked, "where do I sign?" Laura hesitated briefly before pointing toward the bottom of the page. 10 minutes later, it was completed. As I placed the pen down, an unsettling lightness spread through my chest, a sensation of snapping the final chain that held me back. "I hope you understand," my father said as I stood to leave. "This is best for our family, for our reputation." I paused at the doorway and looked back at them one last time. The strange thing is, You always feared I would damage the family name, yet none of you truly knew what I had built or who I would become." My mother opened her mouth to reply, but I raised a hand. "You chose to abandon me. Now live with that decision." The door clicked softly, muffled by the weight of what had just taken place. I stepped into the cool night air, inhaled deeply, and felt sorrow. But I could not bring myself to say it aloud. I climbed into my car, my hands shaking as I wiped away the tears that had already fallen. The family I cherished, the one I had fought to belong to, had turned their backs on me. Yet I promised myself I would prove them wrong. I would rise above their rejection. 3 days later, I found myself in my workshop, carefully swirling the shiny finish on a wooden sculpture crafted from reclaimed materials. I had worked through the entire night not because of any deadline, but because I dreaded thinking they could really do that to you. Laura's voice, my closest friend and longtime business partner, pulled me out of my thoughts. She placed a cup of coffee on the table, her brown eyes blazing with anger. Not only had they disowned me, but they made sure I had no financial ties left to them. I spoke with an unnervingly steady voice. "You just agreed without a fight?" Laura stared at me in disbelief. I shrugged, saying what was there to fight for if they were so quick to cut me loose. I had no reason to remain connected to that cold, lifeless house. Laura shook her head, about to respond, when the workshop door suddenly flew open. Ethan, my business partner, stormed in like a tempest, clutching his laptop tightly. "Sarah, you must see this right now, another order problem?" "No," Ethan said, grinning. "A massive opportunity." He set the laptop on the table and turned the screen toward me. On the homepage of Living in Style, a headline blazed: "The young artist revolutionizing sustainable interior design meets Sarah Sinclair." I blinked, unable to believe what I was witnessing. "Could they just call me an artist?" Laura nearly shouted with exhilaration. "And not only that, you are also hailed as a forerunner in the recycled interior design movement." David drummed his fingers on the table and added, "That is not everything. Do you know who shared this piece?" I shook my head in surprise. "The business magazine, Business Forward." I was stunned. "Exactly. And they want you on the cover of their upcoming issue." I glanced at David and then back at the screen. My heart raced. I had always trusted in my craft, but never dreamed it would receive such wide acclaim. "Are you going to accept?" Laura questioned, her eyes glowing with hope. I took a steadying breath. The article about me spread rapidly like wildfire. Within a single month, my workshop's income increased 50 times, and orders poured in from all over, even abroad. Small boutique shops, as well as upscale luxury brands, reached out. A distinguished recycled furniture retailer invited me to create an exclusive collection together. My business transformed overnight in ways I had never imagined. I was constantly meeting with clients, signing agreements, and growing my enterprise. I had truly created something unique, a flourishing empire. Suddenly, my phone started to buzz with unexpected contacts. There was a message from Dad. I stared at the screen. His note was short. "Call me." I did not respond immediately. Shortly after, another message popped up from Rachel. "We need to talk. Call me when you are free." They scoffed when they signed the papers to cut me off. Did any of them imagine this day would arrive? Another message from Luke. I read the article. "Congratulations, Rachel and David want to see you." I chose not to answer any of their messages. Instead, I glanced at my schedule. Tomorrow morning I had a photo shoot for Business Forward. Later, I was meeting with a famous television producer who invited me to appear on the Today Show to discuss my journey. My family could wait because this time I was in charge. I always believed this moment would come. With my tireless effort, it was unavoidable. 3 days after my Business Forward interview was published, my phone would not stop ringing. First, a message from Rachel. We need to talk. It is urgent. Call me as soon as possible. I did not reply. Then messages arrived from Luke and Sarah. Rachel and David want to see you. They said it is a family matter. Family matter. How ironic, considering when they erased me from their lives. Did they think of me as family then? I put my phone aside and returned to work. Less than an hour later, it rang once more. This time I slowly answered and read, "Dinner at home 7 p.m. on Sunday. The entire family will be there. We need to talk, sweetheart." No greetings, no small talk, just another order as if I were still their obedient daughter. Yet this time my father called me sweetheart. I set down my phone, thinking for a moment, then typed a brief reply. Okay. I did not arrive early this time. I was certain to be there exactly at 7 p.m. As I stepped inside, as I stood on the front porch, I realized nothing had altered. The same familiar Mercedes rested in the driveway, the neatly trimmed hedges flawless, and the pristine white paint showcased an image of achievement they had always strived for. I lifted my hand to ring the doorbell, but the door swung open before I could reach it. My mother appeared with slightly swollen eyes, as if she had been crying, yet her voice stayed steady. "Sarah, you are here," she said, her welcome feeling odd. I said nothing and simply stepped inside. The living room was unnervingly quiet. Rachel, Luke, David, and my father sat exactly as they did the day they expelled me. However, now there was nothing like contempt or condemnation. My father cleared his throat and broke the hush. "Everyone, please sit down. We need to talk about something." I glanced around before slowly taking my seat. This time I was not the vulnerable one. I felt much more self-assured. "Why have I been summoned?" I inquired, folding my arms. Rachel was the first to answer. "The business is struggling." I was not taken aback. "The car company?" I scoffed it was thriving when I left all behind. Luke squirmed in his chair. "We are facing difficulties with our loans. The automotive market is evolving and we're not keeping pace." I cut straight to the chase. "So, what exactly do you want from me?" My father rested his hands on the table with a grave look. "We want to join forces with you." A hush fell over the space. I studied each familiar face, hiding my smirk. So, they had finally acknowledged my value, yet I was not there to support them on their conditions. Leaning back, I allowed a faint smile to form on my lips. "All right, let us discuss the terms." I agreed to meet them, but only on my conditions. If they wished to talk business, we would negotiate as strangers. We would meet at a restaurant of my choosing, and they must arrive punctually. I selected the Langston, one of the city's most prestigious dining establishments, the same spot my family once proudly claimed as regular visitors, though times had shifted. Now, the roles were reversed, and I was the important guest. I showed up exactly on time, neither early nor late. As I entered, the staff instantly recognized me. "Good evening, Miss Sarah," the manager greeted warmly. "Your table is set, and the chef has prepared a special menu just for you tonight." I nodded silently and followed him to the private dining area. My family was already seated. My mother sat stiffly, gripping her napkin tightly. Rachel kept a professional expression as though bracing herself for a trial. Luke had his arms crossed, attempting to appear confident. David focused on his phone, but this time, I noticed the strain on his face. My father, a man who always prided himself on being the family's stronghold, was looking at me in an unfamiliar way. There were no furrowed brows, no severe frowns. I pulled out a chair and settled down calmly. "So," I said, raising my wine glass slightly, "what is it that you want?" He let out a deep breath, breaking the silence. "The company is in trouble, Sarah. The bank has withdrawn our loans, and we have less than 60 days. There are only a few days left to pay or risk losing everything." The automobile industry is evolving too quickly, Luke added, and we have fallen behind. No one is willing to invest in an outdated family enterprise anymore, but you have the power to change that. My mother spoke softly. Your image, your reputation? I released a quiet laugh. My reputation? I tilted my head in disbelief. You mean the very reputation you branded as shameful a year ago? Silence filled the room as I set down my wineglass and crossed my arms. You do not want me, I said calmly but with a sharp edge. You want what I can offer, Rachel sighed while pulling out a file. Sarah, we are all grown-ups. This is business. Yes, we made errors, but we must rescue this company and find a new path. If we join forces, I let out a dry chuckle. You refused to partner with me when you cast me out of your lives, but now, as the company faces ruin, suddenly, I become a valuable collaborator. My father ground his teeth. You do not have to do this, Sarah. Do what, Dad? I raised my head steadily. Live by my principles. Stand firm in my beliefs. You always told me never to let anyone exploit me, so if this is my way of doing that, then congratulations. I am following your guidance. The atmosphere grew tense. A waiter approached quietly, placing appetizers on the table, yet no one touched the food. After a long silence, my mother rested her hands on the table, looking at me with pleading eyes. You are the only one who can save us. I stared at her for a prolonged moment and then stood up. I used to cherish family, I said. If only back then you had simply supported me, I would not have hesitated to help you now. But you made one thing abundantly clear. I am no longer part of this family because my career, my humble job, was a disgrace to you. I grabbed my bag and began to leave, when Sarah, my father, called out to me, his voice edged with impatience. Name your price, whatever it might be, we can work something out. I halted and glanced back at them one final time. You are mistaken, Dad, I said with a faint smile. My price is not money, it is trust, and you no longer have it. You discarded it a year ago. Then I left the room, leaving them with their uneaten meals and the harsh truth they had refused to accept. As I stepped out of the restaurant, I felt freer than ever. 3 months ago, they pushed me away. Now, with everything falling apart, they wanted me back, as if nothing had changed. I said no, and I held no regrets. Life, however, has a strange way of unfolding. Not even 48 hours later, a new opportunity appeared, one I had never allowed myself to hope for. You need to sit down right now. Ethan burst into the workshop, his face glowing with excitement. I looked up from my workbench where I was carefully arranging stained glass pieces for a fresh project. What is it? I murmured, but Ethan was already moving forward. No, Sarah, you really have to see this at once. He placed his laptop in front of me, the screen showing an email from a name I had never expected. I was expecting to see the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, and I froze. They want my work, not just that. Ethan gasped. They want you as the main artist in their upcoming sustainable art exhibition. This is not just a huge opportunity, Sarah. This is the ultimate achievement. I sat there staring at the screen, my thoughts swirling. MoMA, one of the most renowned museums worldwide. If I accepted, my creations would not only be showcased in fashion magazines or luxurious showrooms, but would be recognized as genuine art. It was everything I had ever dreamed about. I slowly leaned back in my chair, feeling the heavy pounding of my heart in my chest. Yet when one door opens, the past always knocks. Just one day later, a message from Luke popped up on my phone. Mom has been crying a lot. Dad, too. Can you come see them? I didn't reply. A few hours afterward, Rachel sent a long email. Her words were softer than usual, with a rare trace of honesty. Sarah, I know we were wrong and acted foolishly, but please consider Mom. She really needs you. I switched off my phone, promising myself not to let feelings control me. But that afternoon, something shifted everything. A letter arrived, something I had never gotten from my father before. Slowly, I opened the envelope and recognized his familiar strong handwriting. Sarah, I have written this letter countless times, but there is no way to make it perfect, no way to excuse what I have done. I was wrong about everything. You have always been the strongest one in this family. Not because of your achievements or recognition, but because you found the bravery to follow your own path despite everything. It took me far too long to understand this, and maybe I do not deserve to have you back, but if you are willing to give me a chance to fix things, I would be truly thankful. I gripped the letter tightly, sensing emotions toward my father I had never experienced before. Sincerity. That entire night I reflected deeply, realizing I no longer needed my family's approval. Yet if I chose to support them, it would be under my own conditions. The following morning I sent a brief message to my father. We had a short conversation, but this time on my own terms. The family gathering happened inside a hospital room, a setting none of us ever imagined would host such a decisive moment. My mother had been admitted due to stress and exhaustion. The doctor insisted that rest was her most crucial remedy. Even from her hospital bed, she held my hand firmly. Tears streaming down her face, she whispered, "You came." I nodded silently. Outside her room at a small conference table sat my father, Rachel, Luke, and David, all waiting for my verdict. I opened my briefcase and placed several documents on the table stating, "If I agree to help, these are my conditions." As I looked into their eyes, no one opposed. Each understood there was no room for negotiation. I tapped the papers with my pen and declared that Sinclair Auto would cease to exist. The company will be renamed Sinclair Electric, a sustainable electric car brand that integrates recycled art into its showroom designs. Luke raised an eyebrow and asked what I meant. I met his gaze and said that the world is evolving, Luke, and you are too slow to keep up. If this business is going to survive, it must transform into something completely new, and I am the one to make that happen. I pointed to the initial clause of the contract. I will serve as CEO, hold 51% ownership, and have full executive authority. None of you will be allowed to intervene. Rachel frowned, but I cut her off, saying no objections. David will be given the role of honorary advisor, but will hold no decision-making rights. As for the rest, I looked directly at Luke, Rachel, and David, who will only receive shares proportional to their actual contributions. No one will receive special privileges simply due to family ties. My father remained silent for a long time, then finally nodded in agreement. I raised an eyebrow, surprised at his swift acceptance, then understood he had no alternatives. I added one final term, addressing them all. If we move forward, the past ends here. No one will have the right to call me the disgraceful child or the traitor of the family anymore. If you want my support, then accept that I was never the problem. You were? The room fell quiet. My mother's eyes filled with new tears while my father sat lost in thought. Rachel was the first to break the silence. She sighed and admitted we were wrong. Luke lowered his head and confessed he had been too proud to recognize what I was trying to do. Now I realized David gave a subtle nod, no longer hiding behind his usual indifference. At last my father reached for the contract and handed me the pen. I looked into his eyes, noticing the weariness yet acceptance shining through. I passed him the pen, and one after another, my family members signed the agreement they never imagined would come to pass. In that moment, I understood that I truly held the influence within the very family that once rejected me. A year later, I stepped through the towering glass doors of Sinclair Electric, now among the fastest progressing sustainable electric vehicle brands in the nation. The showroom lights gleamed on the newest car models. The company had not only endured but flourished. we secured a significant partnership with a leading battery manufacturer, which allowed Sinclair Electric's vehicles to achieve ranges far beyond competitors. Our showrooms evolved beyond places to purchase cars. They became captivating spaces where technology merged with creativity. Everything operated exactly as I had dreamed, and my family finally embraced their proper roles. Rachel left her stressful legal profession to become the chief legal officer of the company, finding purpose without being overwhelmed by countless lawsuits. Luke, once the person who ridiculed my efforts, now led the creation of an electric medical vehicle fleet, helping hospitals adopt environmentally conscious transportation solutions. David, who once showed no interest in anything, was now leading research and development focused on advancing technology to improve vehicle efficiency. My father stayed on as an honorary advisor, but no longer held decision-making power. For the very first time, we truly worked side by side. That evening, we met in my art studio, the very place where everything had started. On the table rested a small box containing the exact papers that had once shattered me. I picked up one, a copy of the family disownment agreement, the document they had forced me to sign a year ago. "What are we going to do with this?" Luke asked, his tone more serious than I had ever heard before. I reached for a lighter and said, "We burn it." No one protested. One by one, we threw the papers into the kiln, watching them turn to ashes, a declaration that our past would never come back. As the embers cooled, I collected the ashes into a small dish and carried them to the glass furnace with the words, "Now let Laura transform it into something beautiful." I picked up a molten glass rod, dipped it into the ashes, and began to shape it. Under my hands, a new sculpture took form, a small abstract piece symbolizing a family not perfect, not symmetrical, but authentic and resilient. My mother placed a hand on her chest, tears flowing down her cheeks, and whispered, "It's beautiful, Sarah." I nodded, feeling lighter than ever before. It was not just a sculpture, it was a symbol of our renewal. I positioned it in the center of Sinclair Electric's main showroom where it stood lit by soft lights, a constant reminder. Sometimes what seems broken can be transformed into something even more stunning. This time, I held complete control over my destiny and the company that had once turned me away. The grand opening of Sinclair Electric's third location was more impressive than I had ever dreamed. What used to be an outdated family car business had evolved into a beacon of innovation and eco-friendliness, drawing not only environmentally aware customers, but also some of the largest investors in the field. Our new showroom featured an open layout where technology blended seamlessly with art. Sleek electric cars stood alongside handcrafted sculptures made from recycled materials. A huge glass wall captured the light from chandeliers, built using salvaged metal from vintage car models, crafting an ambiance both contemporary and heartfelt. The showroom was filled with journalists, business executives, and even those who had doubted Sinclair Electric's future, now all standing before me, amazed by its rebirth. I moved to the small stage, microphone in hand, gazing out at the crowd and especially my family seated in the first row. "A year before, nobody believed this company would make it," I said, my voice resonating in the grand room. "But today we are not just surviving, we are reshaping the whole industry." This success came from having the bravery to welcome change. My eyes locked with my father's, the very man who once dismissed us. He gave me a subtle nod, not the stiff approval typical of a conventional businessman, but something far deeper, a sense of pride. I continued, "I want to express my gratitude to everyone who believed in this vision. My team, our investors, and my family. Yes, we made mistakes, but we learned that what truly matters is not where you begin, but the path you decide to follow." A burst of applause filled the room, and I realized I had succeeded. The celebration after the event took place in the showroom courtyard, where twinkling lights shimmered against the glass exteriors of the new electric car models. I stood near the bar, casually sipping my wine, when Rachel approached me. "You really won this time," she said, a faint smile touching her lips. I shook my head, glancing toward the showroom where Luke was showcasing the new medical vehicle line while David engaged with a group of young engineers, discussing battery technology. This time we got it right. As the evening wound down, my family gathered beneath the glass family sculpture, the piece I had crafted from the ashes of the disownment papers. My father gently touched the sculpture, his gaze distant. "It took me years to recognize your true value," he said quietly. "Now I understand you never had to prove anything to me. I was the one who needed to prove himself to you." I returned a gentle smile. "You already have." For the first time, I felt genuinely at peace. I had my family, but now it was on my own terms, and I had finally found a place where I belonged. Rachel understood that she was not merely establishing a business. She was creating a legacy. Sarah's experience goes beyond building an empire. It embodies a profound lesson about self-respect, forgiveness, and the power of transformation. Rejected by her own family, she did not let despair take hold. Instead, she transformed her suffering into motivation for achievement. In truth, countless individuals have been undervalued or excluded for refusing to follow conventional routes. Genuine success arises from staying authentic to oneself, rather than seeking approval from others. Often, the most meaningful form of revenge is not bitterness, but living a life filled with pride. Sarah's path illustrates the significance of determination and autonomy. What are your thoughts about her journey? If you were in her position, would you find it in your heart to forgive and support your family after those hardships? Feel free to express your opinions in the comments below, and remember to subscribe for more captivating and uplifting stories focused on family and life.